fear over electoral rigging rocks Zimbabwe as the country.
Yesterday, after listening to Prime Minister May's assessment of the state of the negotiations,
Why it is our diocesan patron feast day is because the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Assumption is dedicated.
Do not have it in their mindset or in their psyche that we are playing against Algeria.
Hello guys, you guys got very big rams. I hope you don't get it from where I'm suspecting.
Do you think you're the only one who knows where all the good news come from? My son bought me this ram all the way from abroad with baluwo.
Oh yes, this must be baluwo. Me too, my daughter just bought one for me. True baluwo. With baluwo, everything is possible.
This Tabaski, you can buy RAM for your family using the trusted Baluo. Just log on to the www.baluo.com website or download the app. You can buy RAM, otherwise foodstuffs such as rice, sugar, cooking oil, and much more for your family this Tabaski. Baluo, better than sending money.
Hello guys, you guys got very big rams. I hope you don't get it from suspecting.
نستعين الشرع المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين ربنا أتمم لنا نورنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا آتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله رب العالمين.
Shukran, Imam Diallo. Bishop, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Lord God Almighty, without whom nothing is strong and nothing is holy, increase and multiply your mercies upon us, humankind, particularly us in this nation, the Gambia, and guide with your Holy Spirit's power the sittings of the TRRC, that all who come here will testify to the truth, and that your healing, your reconciliation, and forgiving power and judgment will descend mightily upon this land. This we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, my Bishop. Council, are we ready with this morning's witness? The legal team can't access the microphones. Voila.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, commissioners, members of the audience. We are ready to proceed with the first witness of the day. And may I ask the usher to bring in the witness, please? Thank you.
I, Madi Sise.
I, Madi Sise.
Do swear that.
Do swear that.
I will speak the truth.
I will speak the truth.
The whole truth.
The whole truth.
And nothing but the truth.
And nothing but the truth.
So help me God.
So help me Allah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Sise.
My name is Mr. Fall.
Welcome to the TRRC.
Thank you.
I think I don't need any further introductions. You've just called out my name.
Okay.
My job today is to assist you tell your story to the Commission. So I intend to cover several topics with you, including your biographical information, your work as a journalist, the problems you have had with law enforcement authorities or the APRC government as you discharge your responsibilities or carried out your functions as a journalist, the impact that has had on you and your family, what eventually happened to your son, who also practiced the trade of journalism, and we would end with you being given an opportunity to say a few words to the Commission about what you think about the media in the Gambia, what role it can play, and what ideas you think the Gambian people need to know in order to help us shape a better future for Gambia. So are you ready to proceed,
Yes,
sir?
I am.
Wonderful. Thank you. What are your full names, sir?
My name's Ahmadi M.K. Sise.
And what is your date of birth, sir?
I was born on the 5th May, 1957.
Where were you born?
In a small riverside village in the Upper River region called Pirai in the Tumana district.
Could you say the name again, please?
In a small riverside village called Pirai in the Upper River region in the Tumana district.
And how do you spell Pirai?
P-E-R-A-I.
Pirai. Thank you very much. Where did you go to school?
I went to school in Brikamaba, which is in the lower Floodwest, simply because there was no school around my village at the time, and my father also migrated to Fuladu. So I went to Brikamaba Primary School 1964.
And carry on and tell us briefly.
From there, I started to the then common entrance exams and got an entrance to a junior secondary school. And my choice was Latrikunda, so I moved to Latrikunda. That was in 1972. And that's where I did my secondary education. And on completion, around 1976, I started to selection exams to join the teaching field. Then taught in few schools around the country, from Latrikunda Danso to Sukuta Primary School, then to Jambanjeli in the 76-77 academic year, and 77-78 I was transferred to Jarumakoto, where I started to the college entrance exams and went to the Yundum Teacher Training College. I spent 2 years, but could not complete the course, because at the time when I was in my final year, there was a student strike against some anomalies in the college. And I was an executive member of the Student Union then, as the Secretary General of the Student Union. And for some reasons, myself and 5 other executive members were expelled from the college. So that changed my profession to various walks of life, but that's a long story. I ended up being a journalist around 1995.
When you decided to become a journalist, which organization did you work for?
I worked for the Gambia News and Report. The publisher was the late Swaibu Konate. And when I was joining the profession, like many of my colleagues then, we do not have any background training on journalism, so we do have what is called on-the-job training. So I spent a good number of my years at News and Report, first as a reporter, staff reporter, then to deputy editor, precisely assistant Swaibu Konate in the management of the newspaper for several years. And until around 2006, when there was a need for me to manage the independent newspaper. So I went to the independent newspaper as a general manager, which was short-lived. I think we will come to that later.
During this period that you were with News and Report published by Swaibu Konate, did you occupy any positions in the media world, for instance, in media organizations?
Yes, whilst I was at the News and Report, I was elected as the second vice president of the Gambia Press Union. Precisely, this should be around 1999, there around that year. So I worked on Demba Jao, who was then the president of the Gambia Press Union. And later in 2005, I was elected president of the Gambia Press Union. And in the same year, I was also elected as second vice president of WAJA, West African Journalists Association. And later that year also, in a congress in Russia, I was elected in the International Federation of Journalists, IFJ, as representative in the executive, representative of Africa in the executive.
And that would be in 2007, 2008?
Yes, precisely.
And your position as second vice president of WAJA would have been in 2005 to 2008?
Yes, yes.
And that was the same period in which you served as president of the Gambia Press Union?
Yes, 2005, yes.
And did you establish any media organizations yourself?
Yes, I did. When I was made jobless by the APRC government by closing down the independent newspaper which I was general manager, I decided to found an organization called Media Agenda, which was basically specialized in media research and teaching or training. And 3 years down the line, I also founded a newspaper. But my idea initially was to found a newspaper. But then the advice I got from some very senior colleagues is that it is not the right time. If you just from these horrible detentions that NIA due to your role at the independent newspaper, if you want to set up another newspaper, the hunt will still follow you. So I decided to set up Media Agenda, which is basically into training of journalists and also doing some media research and that sort of a thing, until 3 years down the year when I founded the Daily News in 2009 of April.
We would come to your work at the establishment of the Daily News, why you established it and all that. But for now, let's take a few steps back. You said you were with the News and Report magazine from 1995 to almost 2006. You left News and Report magazine. Which organization did you join when you left?
The independent newspaper.
And earlier you did indicate as general manager.
Yes, general manager of independent newspaper.
Yes. Can you tell us about your time at the Independent?
Like I said, my time at the newspaper, the independent newspaper was short-lived. When I picked up the job as general manager, my role was supposed to be managing the newspaper on a day-to-day basis. I have a management team and also an editorial team, which was headed by Musa Sedi Khan, was the editor-in-chief. So basically, just to make sure that the independent newspaper is out regularly, we meet the necessary logistics of the production here and there, and that is what I was doing at Independent until 27th March.
Of which year?
Of 2006, if my memory serves me very well. We had published an article in the Independent newspaper. This period coincided with an attempted coup, said to be an attempted coup by the government.
And which coup would that be?
This was a coup said to have been led by Ndur Cham, who was the CDS then.
This was in 2006.
Yes.
We would come to that particular issue. But let's take a few steps backwards. During your career, especially the early days of your career as a journalist, did you have any problems with law enforcement?
Oh yes, I can recall 1 or 2 occasions, or even more. The precise dates would have been difficult, but I remember there was a time when I went to cover the arrival of the leader of the United Democratic Party, Hussein Dabo, who had a long trip in Europe, must be around 1998 or something like that. And he was supposed to come, and his militants were supposed to gather at the airport to welcome him, and then followed by a political rally. My editor, Mrs. Swaibu Konate, assigned me to cover the arrival and the rally.
But in fact, before that particular incident, there was another incident. Let's take it a bit in chronological order. There was this incident at Chamoy Bridge. You recall that incident? Perhaps we would start with that one.
Okay. That one also has connection to my coverage as a journalist. I was assigned still by my editor, Swaibu Konate, because the United Democratic Party were going on a nationwide tour, and I was assigned to cover it. More or less, I would have said during my active time as a reporter, I was more of a political reporter than any other. So I was assigned to go and cover the entire tour. And the tour began in Julangel, where the party had some small pull and push, because there were certain militants who came to the Alikali of Julangel to say the United Democratic Party should not hold a rally there, but Al-Khali disagreed.
You said some militants came there and said members of the United Democratic Party would not hold a rally there. Which militants are you referring to?
These are APRC militants. And they were then driving, using a pickup, a white pickup. I later come to know that it was one.
Let's get the story right. Let's get it correctly. What did the APRC militants come to do in Julangel?
In Julangel, they wanted the meeting not to take place because they spoke to Al-Khali to say that he must not allow the meeting. And
in a sense, UDP was being prevented
to hold a rally.
To hold a rally by APRC militants.
Yes.
And they wanted to use the alcalo of the village to stop the rally from going on.
Yes.
Then what continued?
Then they didn't succeed. The meeting went ahead, and I covered it as I was supposed to. And then as the entourage left Julangel.
But did it happen without any hindrance by the APRC militants?
Actually, the pull and push was between them and Al-Khali, and then they drove to the outskirts of the village, parked, and were waiting. So when the entourage came, they passed them, but then they had no clashes with them.
Do you know who was the leader of the APRC militants at the time?
At the time, I later come to know it was one Ali Unjai.
Ali Unjai. Okay, proceed.
And then from there, the entourage moved to the next village. Suppose that should be Aluhar. And then again, the same group, as the entourage was going into the village, the same group who were driving the pickup were leaving the village. So at this point, some youths in the entourage followed them. Later, I come to realize they followed them and then stopped them at a bridge crossing to Dembakunda, because the next meeting was going to be after Anuhar was Dembakunda. And then there was some confrontations, as I was told, and Aliu confessed that he was sent there by late Baba Job and team. But then he was not going.
Who was Baba Job?
Baba Job was a very powerful person in the APRC regime. He was one time majority leader in the National Assembly, was one time also member of parliament for Jara West. Aliu confessed that he was sent by Baba Job. But since this is the case, he is no more going to carry on the mission. So if they pardon him, he was going to rest his case. So then the entourage had a meeting in the Dembakunda with no problem, and the following day, the entourage moved to Basse, and the last meeting was held in Mansajankunda. When we left Mansajankunda, going towards, supposed to go to Kular, but passed through Kundam, then we found a roadblock on the highway. I was in one of the vehicles driving. I was not in the first, I think maybe the 6th or 7th vehicle. Then the vehicles were just, as they reached the block, because there were big boulder stones laid across the highway. Unknowing to us, there were some people who were hidden in the bush with masks. And then when the vehicle stopped, all what we experienced was a rain of stones coming from them. So that was sort of an ambush. So there were clashes. The other side also were throwing stones at them, and then later on they had to flee. And when they were followed...
Which side was the other side? Which side are you referring to as the other
now I'm
side?
talking about the APRC, whether they're militants or thugs or hooligans, whatever name you can call them. But when they blocked the road and they were hidden in the bush, I didn't know that there were people in the bush. I only saw vehicles standing because I was far from the first vehicle. But before I realized anything, then stones started coming.
Where were they coming from?
They were coming from the APRC militants who were hidden in the bush on the right-hand side of the road as we are going towards Fatoto. And then the UDP militants also started grabbing stones because that was a hill. If you know the area, it's a very hilly place, so anybody can have access to stones. And then as a result, the APRC militants started to run away. They were pursued, but nobody really got hold of them. But as the UDP people were coming from their pursuance, and then there are some of those militants on the APR side who could not run for some reasons known to them. And the crowd that is coming from pursuing the others were able to discover them. And then there were 3 in number, I think. 1 lady and 2 gentlemen were captured. And then there was a big commotion. As a reporter, I was looking at things as they were unfolding. And I could see the UDP leadership saying, let's get them, don't harm them, let's put them in the vehicles and go back to Basse. Report the matter to the police station, and then we can proceed. Finally, they succeeded in that. The lady and the 2 gentlemen were captured and then taken to Basse police station, and the rest of us who were reporters and their militants. Statements were issued in Basse station, and while the statements were going on, some of us who had sustained some bruises here and there went to the Basse Health Center. I was one of them. When I went, as I was there, I saw the UNHCR vehicle come to the health center with someone who later I knew was Ali Unjai, who was in a very bad status. And his people asked him, I was there, I said, what happened to you? And he said it was an accident. Then they took him in. Not long, he was pronounced dead. So the situation was, for me, a little bit dangerous, because I recall the student strike of 2000, then police stations were attacked. So I went back to the police station. I told the police, but there is this announcement at the hospital that Alunja is killed, and is killed by the UDP. And here, some of us are here. So I remember in 2000, a similar case happened during the student strike. The police were not able to control the crowd. Can you go to the nearest army camp? There was an army camp in Basse, so that you get reinforcement in case of anything else. But if you fail to do so, if I am alive, I will be a witness to say I told you guys to take care of that. So I didn't see any army in the police station. We gave our statements, and late that night, the entourage left Basse for the normal trip. So we had a stop in Kular. In the morning, there were communications between the party leadership and I think the police. Later on, we were told that the tour cannot continue, and the police are saying for the safety of the militants, they should go back to Basse. So we returned to Basse, on the whole not knowing that we are prisoners. As soon as we got to Basse, they brought in barriers and sealed the police station with us. I think we have numbered about 80 of us. And quickly we were rushed to Basse Magistrate the next day. So we had, I think, 2 days at the police station. We had to spend the night in the open. No food was given, and there was no access to us. And then when the matter was before the magistrate, the conclusion was, because we charged treason of killing Ali Jai. So
treason or murder?
I don't know. Treason, I think it's murder, something like murder of Ali Jai. So the matter was referred to Banjul High Court, and we were put in an open truck from Basse.
Who was the first accused person in that case?
I believe it was Usainu Dabo.
Which Usainu Dabo are you referring to?
The leader and Secretary General of the United Democratic Party, Usainu Dabo, and one-time Vice President and Foreign Minister of the Gambia.
Proceed, please.
So we were put on an open truck I remember Hussein insisted that he was not going to the front because late Femi Peter and Yaya Jallo, still surviving, are old and had no good health, so he cannot afford to sit in front and allow them to sit in the open. So he chose to sit in the open, and Yaya and Femi Peters were in front. So we were driven straight to Banjul. I think we arrived in Banjul very late in the night, and then the next day we were before the High Court. Later on, the charges were dropped against me and others.
But for how long did how long did the charges subsist against you?
I remember going on 3 occasions. There were adjournments, so I can't recall exactly how long, but I don't think it has gone beyond 3 months as far as my charges were dropped against me.
Do you know what was the basis of the murder charge against you?
Well, what we know is that we are responsible of killing Ali Unjai at the Chamoy ambush.
Did you inform the police officers or the investigators in charge of the case that you were a journalist covering the occasion, covering the events?
Both in Basse and in Banjul, when I gave my statement in Basse, I did indicate that I was a reporter covering the tour. And during the questioning also in Banjul, I did mention the same thing. So I don't know what is the basis of the charges being dropped against me. But I know we were 80 initially in number, but very few ended up to the end of the case.
How do you feel about that charge of murder that was brought against you?
Well, I only felt that at the time, the type of government we have, we are not friends at all. Media and the government are not friends, even though we don't see them. We don't see the then government as our enemies. But then, from their point of view, the journalists are just enemies and bad elements. So as a result, they try to do all they can to silence us. Perhaps if they succeed in the case, meaning that I would have been sent to jail for quite a long time or even killed, I don't know. So I think the motive is to silence the media.
In fact, you had another encounter with the security forces surrounding an event dealing with Mr. Usainu Dabo. Earlier on, you started talking about his return from a European tour. Could you tell us about that, please?
Yes, I would call that an attempt to kill me because, like I said, he went on a European tour and spent quite a long time there. And when he was coming, it was announced in the radios and the local newspapers. And I was assigned to cover the arrival and the subsequent rally, political rally. And knowing the type of system we have, I printed a label, the press, and just put it in front of my vehicle so that I can be easily identified as not a militant, but a media person. So when I got to the entrance of the airport on the highway, Banjul-Brikama Highway, where all the militants were forced to stop. They were not allowed to go beyond that. So when I arrived with my vehicle, they said, okay, you can go, since you are a journalist. So I passed, I went, and then later discovered that the flight was canceled, so I returned. So when I returned, I headed to Serekunda, Churchill's town, where the rally was supposed to happen. So I guessed the rally will go ahead, so I went to cover the rally. So as I was coming around Tabokoto, the then First Lady Tutifal was being escorted.
At this stage, your vehicle, was it traveling in a convoy or it wasn't traveling in a convoy?
No, I wasn't traveling in a convoy.
So it was your vehicle in the midst of other vehicles that were using the road at the time?
At the time, yes.
Okay, proceed, please.
So when I come up to Tabokoto, I heard the siren, so I drove off. I was there with my late friend, Almami Jagana, who was really driving the vehicle. And we parked off and then allowed the the First Lady and its convoy to go. As soon as the last vehicle came, then I instructed him to follow, and then we followed, and then this gentleman just pointed a pistol from the back and fired. So for me, I thought it was just a joke, but then it was a real. So the bullet came, unfortunately hit the lower part of the vehicle door, and then the glasses broke. But Almame did not know what had happened. So we continued up to the meeting point. Then I told him that we were fired at. He said, no, that's not true. So we alighted and looked at the vehicle, and then there's a mark there. Then I had to go to Bundu police station to report the matter. And when I went to the police station, one Pass Silva was the station officer. He said if we can get mechanics to remove the door of the vehicle and check whether actually it was true or not. So we paid somebody who did it, and then they removed the broken glasses and then found the bullet. Then he confirmed, yes, this is really a bullet. So I gave my statements, and that was the end of it.
You said when you tailed after the last vehicle in the convoy of the First Lady, somebody aimed at you in that vehicle and fired.
Yes.
Who was that person?
It was a soldier. I can't know the name, but it's a soldier dressed in a military dress. I can definitely say he's a soldier of the Gambia Armed Forces, and it's one of the escorts.
In your view, did the soldier know at the time that you belonged to the press?
Yes, because like I said, the press is clearly written in a bold mark in front of my vehicle. So anybody 50 meters away will know that this is a journalist.
You said that you saw the soldier aim and fired. In your view, was it aimed at you or just at the vehicle?
In my view, it's aimed at me, because the vehicle really, there are human beings using the vehicle. So, and this vehicle is marked press very clearly. In my own opinion, I might be wrong or right, but that's my opinion that I was aimed at.
From where you were sitting, your assessment is that he was aiming at you instead of the vehicle?
Yes.
And when you reported to Bunding Police and a bullet was recovered, did the police mount an investigations?
Not to my knowledge. I gave my statements, I left. Nobody called me again. I didn't go back there anymore, knowing the situation.
What situation?
This is, in my opinion, I assess the APRC government as a military government, because it's a military-turned-civilian. So for me, it's still military in a civilian dress. And these are people who, from the word go, assume that we journalists are bad people. We are illegitimate sons. In Africa, we should go 6 feet deep. We should be jobless. That's it. So therefore, following such an attempt on my life under their regime would not really yield anything truthful. So I decided not to follow it up, but then the statement, I really wrote my statement.
You have used 3 interesting descriptions of journalists. Illegitimate sons of Africa, should go 3 feet deep, 6 feet deep, and should be jobless. Can you explain each of those?
These were the words used by the former president of this country, Yahya Jammeh, at several occasions, at political rallies, at press conferences, at other statements. This is his word. So being the head of the state and using such words obviously they're like policy statements. If a president speaks, that's a policy statement.
Can you explain the context in which such words were used? What information or what message did he intend to convey?
The message, from my point of view, that he's really sending is that journalists are against his government, journalists are bad elements, and I think his ultimate objective is to keep the citizenry in darkness. Because if the journalists are not allowed to do their job freely, information will not be given. And if information is not given, the citizens would not know what is going around. It will only be in a particular corner, but it cannot be widespread. What happens in this hall, if the media is not here, the outside world would not know. So from that point of view, I think this is why he wants to eliminate the media.
And explain this issue of 6 feet deep. What does it mean?
6 feet deep literally means the person will be killed and buried. That's the literal meaning of it. And at the time of saying it, I personally do not think that actually he meant killing. But then as the years go on, actually we've seen that he really meant what he said literally, that is to kill.
Okay. We would come back to that, this issue of 6 feet deep, and what it means and how that has been actualized. So let's proceed with the investigations. You said you never went back and you never heard from them again. But how did you feel knowing what has happened to you and that vehicle?
I feel very bad. I feel there is no justice because you cannot attempt on somebody's life. And yet still the authorities that be are not interested in investigating to bring the culprits to book. So I feel very bad. I feel really there is no justice. And and it continues to be the order of the day.
Can you give us a date? Could you situate this event with date? When did it occur?
Like I said, this should be in 1998. But I really cannot recall the precise dates, unless maybe later if I refer to some of my notes, which are not with me, but I can really do that later.
Were you scared after this event?
No, I wouldn't say I was scared, because if I were scared, I would have broken my pen. But I still keep pushing my pen. I wasn't scared at all, and I kept doing my job. I just have to be extra careful, that's all. Because you can't so bravely until you are dead, then that's not bravery. You can do your job with courage, but also be very mindful of your security. So it gives me extra thought to be more careful, but I wasn't scared.
And this threat of sending people 6 feet deep, did it at any point materialize against the journalists?
Oh yes, it did. In 2004, even before 2004, there were a series of arson attacks on media outlets. The independent newspaper suffered from it. We got all the printing press burned down to ashes. And Radio 1 of late George Christensen has his radio station burned down. And a staff of Radio 1, one Aliou Ba, who used to live in Dipakunda, also has an arson attack in the middle of the night. And Ibrahim Asila, the current Minister of Information, also had his own arson attack in his village in Jambu. So actually the 6 feet issue has been gradually translated into action. And 2004, December precisely on the 13th, we've witnessed the killing of Deda Hydra, one of us. So actually, the president's statement of 6 feet down has actually been put into practice.
You remember the exact date?
Of Dada's killing?
Yes.
I think no journalist can ever forget that, particularly me. I have a good relationship with Dada. We belong to a club called the Lions Club. We joke a lot. He's a fine gentleman. I can't forget it. I can't forget it.
What was the impact of Dada's killing?
Dada's murder actually was a big turning point in the lives of journalists in this country. Like I said, it really proved to us that Jammeh and his government really are not only playing with words, they really want to do it. Because they've killed one of us. Killed one of us very close to a police station. I cannot imagine that. Dada's car was pursued and they passed the police intervention unit in Kanifing, and not too far from there he was shot and killed. And up till now, we have not had any results, tangible results, as to who killed Dada. So therefore, that means that the system is in charge. And with all these arson attacks on the media, not a single person is taken before the court. But then, from these 22 years, several of us had suffered from the Jammeh regime, and several of us flee the country in fear of their lives. But not a single person has been taken to court because you have committed an atrocity against a journalist. All the arson attacks, not a single case in court. Come 2004, the killing of Dada, not a single person in court.
But do you know whether the killing of Dada was investigated at all? Because at this stage, you are a vice president, second vice president of the GPU. So I imagine that you would know whether investigations were conducted or not.
I would say a so-called investigation was conducted.
Can you explain that?
So-called in the sense that when Dada was killed, the executive met and we took certain decisions. There was a media blackout, there was a protest march, and we went to the Ministry of Interior and deliver our demands. And one of the demands is to investigate his killing. Shortly after that, we were made to understand that there was a report of the investigation. To our dismay and surprise, the investigation results tend to blame Dada for his death.
Can you explain how, as far as you can recall?
Because I think one of the phrases or the lines in the investigation indicates that Dada was a womanizer, and that is why he was killed, which is totally wrong. So that's why I said it was a so-called investigation. We are saying the circumstances surrounding the killing of Dada should be investigated. Who killed Dada and why was he killed? And we knew very well from other sources, though we do not have, we cannot bring proofs at the time, because nobody would volunteer to give evidence. We knew he was killed by people. And it must be people of the government. Otherwise, they would have been taken before the court. We have seen common criminals who have committed crimes like that, and they were immediately arrested and taken before the court. Why are these particular criminals not before the court? So my conclusion is he was killed by the operatives of the Jammeh regime. And that is why there was no tangible investigation into his death. And that's why I refer to it as a so-called investigation.
You've used two interesting words. He was killed by people. He was killed by operatives of the Jammeh regime. Who are you specifically referring to?
I am talking about the people who carry on Jammeh's killings, and we made to understand that these are junglers. These are a group of soldiers and other types of people who work for Jammeh, and they work according to his orders. So he was killed. I can say he was killed by Jammeh. Now, how he killed him is through his people, because Jammeh himself may not go and kill him, but then he used people to kill Deda. And he used people to burn down our presses. He used people to burn down our houses. He used people to aim and kill us.
You attribute responsibility for the murder of Deda Hydra on Yahya Jammeh.
Very well.
And your testimony is that it is his operatives who actually executed Jammeh's decision or order to kill Deda Hydra.
Very well. That's my position.
But then it's based on suspicion and not tangible evidence, is it?
No, it's not based on suspicion. Obviously, I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. You're a lawyer. Maybe you are using your lenses of law. But what I'm saying that if a government, a responsible government, such an important person like Deda was killed, I would have thought that government would have instituted an investigation into the killing and come out with a good report to the citizens. If that is not done, I will hold the government responsible of killing Deda Hydra.
Fair enough, fair enough. Let us move on a little bit. You said the GPU made certain demarches to the government. How were those demarches received by the government?
Well, can you come back again? Demands, you mean we made demands?
You submitted a petition to the government, didn't you?
Yes, we did.
Which included certain demands.
Yes.
How were those demands dealt with by the government, as far as you know?
They were not dealt with seriousness, because the key demand is we want a proper investigation into the killing of Deda Hydra. That was not done. The investigation we have wasn't sufficient. We even suggested to them that if you think you are handicapped, you don't have the capacity, sought for international help so that the death can be properly investigated. That was not done as well. So they are not serious with the killing, and like I said, my assumption is because they killed him, they cannot investigate themselves. That's my assumption.
This was a significant event. Did it change relations between the media and the government for the better?
Whether the relations have changed for the better?
Yes.
It has not. Since Deda was killed, up to the time Jammeh left this country, the relations between the Jammeh government and the media was never a good relationship.
As far as you are concerned, did you have any other encounter with law enforcement after Deda's killing?
After Deda's killing, yes. 1 year after Deda's killing, then I have assumed the leadership of the Gambia Press Union as the president. We called an international conference to commemorate the 1 year anniversary of his killing. This was a tool we wanted to use as a pressure tool, and we had speakers all over, media organizations. Media Foundation was here, and the IFJ was here, WAJA was here, and we had several speakers. We have invited the government side, but just, it would have been normal for them to come, but they did not turn up. And one thing we had planned to do at the end of that conference was the entire conference to go to the site where Deda was killed, because we never wanted that site to go missing. So we wanted to put a symbol there so that it could be remembered that this is where Deda was killed. When we attempt to move to the site, to the surprise of some people, the entire place was sealed off by the police intervention, soldiers, and we were not allowed to get near to the spot where Deda was killed. And our objective and aim was to put a mark there so that it could be remembered. During that period, one of our female journalists who was also trying to do the coverages had classes with the army because she moved forward. I don't know whether I'll be able to remember the name. I can't remember it now, and she had some scuffles with the armed soldiers and fainted, and then she was rushed to the hospital. Then I followed.
Would that be Ramatulai Chare?
Exactly, Ramatulai Chare. So I had to leave the rest of the conference because there are able people who can handle those kinds, because the Tafa, who was my Secretary General of the GPU, was there with the others. So I rushed to the hospital while I followed the vehicle, because at the time, my fear was, where are they taking her to? So I just followed the vehicle, and then we went, and then finally I found them at the hospital. And then she was in a very bad mood, and then the doctors took good care of her. That was a harassment, as far as I'm concerned, on the media. On the day when we were trying to recall how our colleague was killed, and we want to find some solutions and answers to it, another colleague almost died because she fainted, and then the doctor said she had was a stress or whatever, and then things like that. So she could have died. But she was taken care of by it. So that's also another encounter that it may not be personally, but then it's on the media.
And you find that to be an unlawful hindrance to the exercise of your rights?
Yes.
And you believe that that only happened simply because you were journalists?
Simply because we are journalists? And why would they prevent us from having a mark at where Deda was killed? So,
did you make a request to government to do that?
After that incident?
No, before the incident.
No, we didn't make any request, but it was in our programs that then we will go to the site and then put a mark there. So we do not think we need to take permission from government for that.
Indeed.
It is a known fact. He was gone down at that spot.
And as far as you are concerned, did you have any personal running in with the law enforcement authorities soon after that event?
Soon after that event, no. I didn't have any direct confrontation with them. And
but were you arrested at some point in 2005 or 2006?
I got my, if I may put it that way, second arrest in 2006. Yes.
This was while you were still at the Independent? You were with the Independent?
Yes, when I was with the Independent.
Can you tell us about this?
Yes, like I can say this was precisely on the 27th March 2006. I got some calls in the night and early morning that I should not go to the office because my editor-in-chief, Musa Sedikan, was picked up late in the night for reasons that the informer did not tell me. This is one Lamin Jai who was a staff of the Independent newspaper. I said I will be the last person not to go to the office. Rather, I would visit every police station to know where Musa is kept, rather than run away from my responsibilities as the general manager of the newspaper. So I went to office that morning, not knowing that everybody that comes to the office is arrested. Even government officials who are sent there to drop mails were arrested. So when I went, it wasn't normal around 10 to find Independent newspaper, 10 o'clock in the morning, very lonely. It's not normal. But because I have that privileged information, I suspected what was going on. So I just walked in as if nothing happened and headed towards the office. And then two people in plain clothes called my attention whether I work here. I said yes. And they asked me who I am. I said, I am Mahdi. They said, then you are under arrest. I said, but who are you? And they produced a card to say they are from the office of the president. And people during those days refer to themselves as coming from the Office of the President are the NIA operatives. And I guess it is still the same, starting to be corrected. So they asked me to stand a while, and they made a few calls, and then a police pickup came. So I was put in the pickup and driven to the police intervention unit at Canifing.
What happened when you arrived there?
When I arrived there, to my surprise, the entire staff were there, and others that I don't recognize.
Entire staff of which?
Of the independent newspaper. Because I thought what they were doing is, what they have done to me is what they have done to others. So anybody who comes, whether you are a staff or you have any connection with the paper, you are arrested.
From GM to cleaner?
Even messengers, government messengers who come to drop mails were arrested. I think the order was arrest anybody who comes to the independent premises. Before
your crime must have been very big.
I think so. I think so. But I didn't know what crime we have committed. So I moved. I went. I was asked to sit among them. So we were all sitting outside, and just opposite us, entire police hierarchy were there. From the Inspector General of Police, then was Usman Sonko, and other high-ranking officers that I may not recognize, but they're all in their uniforms. So I thought we must have done committed a very serious crime, and they were calling us one by one. And anybody that goes would be escorted to leave the premises. They wouldn't allow you to come back to the main group. So what they have discussed with the person, we wouldn't have known that. So that is how they were dealing with us until I was left alone on the bench. The last person before me was Julde, who handles our key. He's a little bit disabled. He tried as much as he is disabled, he rushed to come and speak to me before he was pushed away. And he told me, "Uncle, they have taken the keys." He was taken away. So I knew the keys to the offices of the Independent was taken. And then I was called. I was the last person to call. And when I went, they didn't tell me anything. They just said, "Well, we are going to Banjul with you." So they put me in a police double wagon, pickup, white one. And then I was sandwiched by the senior officers and driven straight to the NIA.
At this stage, did you see any of your editors?
No.
At this stage, did you know whether any other independent newspaper staff was detained or arrested?
No, at that point, as we were driving to Banjul, I don't.
How about Musa? At this stage, did you know his whereabouts?
I don't know it on the way. Even though I was given an information that he was picked, but I didn't know where he was. At that point in time, because now we've left the Canifing, they're taking me to Banjul. As we entered Banjul, they branched off on the left and then drove me straight into the NIAs. And they sat me down on a bench. As I sit on the bench, then I know Musa was there. Because Musa, at the time, was crying bitterly of stomach ache. So I was sitting outside and he was calling for help. But nobody went to his help.
Nobody went to his help?
No.
What kind of help was he asking for?
He was complaining of stomach ache. He was citing that he needed help. So I was on the bench. I can recognize his voice because we're colleagues. I knew very well this voice is Musa's voice. Until around 6, when...
What time did you arrive at the NIA?
It should be around 3, 4. It was on a Friday.
In the afternoon?
Yeah, it was on a Friday.
Okay, proceed, please.
So around 6, then they brought Musa out from the cell. And then that was the time we sat together and we were waiting. The next thing I wasn't asked any questions at the time. They were just asked to follow them. They put us in a Mercedes-Benz and drove us to Banjul police station.
At this stage, were you able to have a conversation with Musa?
Oh, yes.
Did you discuss the reasons for your arrest?
No, he just told me that he was arrested in the middle of the night with armed soldiers. That scared his entire family, his wife and children. And when he was brought, he was put in the cell. But they didn't tell him why he was arrested.
And for you, were you told why you were arrested?
I was not until, I think 5 days later.
5 days, you mean?
5 days later. Because when we were taken from the NIA around 6, we were taken straight to Banjul police station. And the instruction given to the police is, keep them here, nobody should talk to them, and they should not go anywhere. So we were packed in the cell, not alone, but with other prisoners.
What type of prisoners?
Well,
common criminals or?
Really, I can't. Well, during the 5 days, we had a lot of discussions with some of them. Some of them is theft. Some of them said they don't know why they are there. And interestingly, we find an old man there who has been there for almost years. Yes.
Years, you mean?
Yes. He will be brought to the police station for like 1 month. I think they're still investigating whatever he may have done, and then taken to Mile 2, you know. So between Banjul police station and Mile 2 is years, and he has never gone to court. And that was interesting for us because as journalists, you always try to get your news anywhere. So for us, that is an interesting thing, and we do not have pens to write, but then these are things that we can write few days or few hours later. So it was interesting. After 5 days, then we were taken up for questioning.
But during these 5 days, were you allowed some of the basic necessities, like shower, for instance? Were you able to shower and change clothes?
At the Banjul station, yes, the prisoners are so much. Toilet facility is there, bath is there, but you take turns. At least the Banjul police station is far better for me than the NIS cells. So, like you rightly said, yes, we were able to at least bath 1 or 2 times. And we don't have access to our homemade foods because they wouldn't allow anybody, even though I realized that one of my daughter, Fatimata, is called Nanding, had visited several police stations, and they would always tell her that he's not with me, with us rather.
Did she visit the NIA?
She did. She went to almost every place, and lately she seek an advice of a lawyer to take the matter before the court because for her she thinks after 72 hours I should be taken before the court. But this was lawyer Kamara, she told me later. And Lamin Kamara later advised her to slow it down because this is at a time when some attempted coup plotters were being tried. So if she wants to push too much, they can charge me for treason.
But at this stage, nobody knew where you were?
No. Nobody.
And your family was not given information as
they
to
were
where
not
you were.
given information, and they have gone to everywhere. So they were in fact, they're more traumatized than myself because I know where I am and I know where they are, but they don't know where I am and they don't know what is happening to me. So my family members don't know where I was all those days.
And the government refused to provide information to show that you were actually in their custody?
They refused. They refused to do that, and later on I have access, when I got my freedom, I have access to newspapers. There were a lot of pressure on the government from the International Federation of Journalists, from the West African Journalists Association, WAJA, from the Gambia Press Union, from individuals, lots of them. where there were a lot of stories about us and the close of the independent newspaper. At one point, my attention was brought to that in the NIA, but we'll come to that later.
So when you were arrested and the other staff released, what happened to the independent newspaper?
The independent was completely under the police sealed the independent off completely for access. Nobody accesses independent. There was police presence 24 hours for 2 good years. Nobody accesses independent. Even after our release, we cannot access it. There was police presence for 24 hours. So we are not allowed to access it, and that was very bad.
We will come back to this later. So at the police station, you had facilities to shower, but you could not change clothes?
No.
You could not have home food?
No.
Were you allowed access to a lawyer?
No, I was not allowed, because for me, as their captive, they didn't allow me that. Even my daughter, who is outside trying to get a lawyer, could not. So I wasn't allowed to have an access to a lawyer, and the instruction is nobody should talk to me, to talk to us.
And for 5 days, you did not know the reasons why you were there?
No.
Can you tell us?
The 6th day, we were taken upstairs to I think the CID's office, Criminal Investigation Divisions. I think the gentleman there was one Mr. Keta, or I can't really remember the name. So, but he was in charge. And the first question he asked us was, do I know why I was there? I said, I don't know. I'm your captive. You should tell me why I'm here. He said, okay, you are here because you ran a story that is not true. I said, yes, I know about that. But I have dealt with that. As a journalist, we've dealt with that. We ran a story, the aftermath of the attempted coup, that Sambaba was part of the coup plotters, and he was arrested. That was one of our headlines. And then the next day, Samba came to the office and complained.
Who was this Sambaba?
Samba was one time director of NIA, and he was also one time a cabinet minister during the James regime.
For which ministry?
I think it was youth, if I can remember. I'm not too sure, either youth or interior, I'm not too sure.
Proceed,
he was a
please.
cabinet minister.
Proceed, please.
And so he complained. We assigned a senior reporter to him. He took his complaints. He disassociated himself with the coup, that he was not arrested. If he was arrested, he would not have been talking to us, which is a fact. And then the next day, we published it in our newspaper. As journalists, that is how we correct our mistakes. We publish that with an apology. So I told the police officer, as far as we are concerned, we have not wronged the government. We've wronged an independent Gambian who is not a government servant, and we have apologized to him, and we have carried a correction. And he called for a copy of that. So one of his men went around. A few minutes later, they came back with that copy where we've carried the corrections.
So we have heard this story before. Was this not a case of mistaken identity? The person charged with an offense or accused of being involved in that attempted coup was another Sambaba, but of a different character. This Sambaba worked in the army, as opposed to Sambaba, the minister.
Well, as far as our newspaper is concerned, and as far as I am concerned, we use his photo, the same Sambaba with that was a former minister and a director. That's the photo we use, and that's the story we use. And that's the person who came to the office to complain.
What I'm trying to drive at is that the true story was that another Sambaba was arrested and detained, and not the actual Sambaba you referred to.
It may be, but in our case, because when this story was out, myself and the editor-in-chief and the author of the story, Lamin Fati, we haven't really gone into that to say, well, no, this is a wrong Sambaba. We mean the Sambaba in the army. So for us, is the Sambaba that is the former minister, and we carried his photo and an apology. So I told the investigating officer at the police station that we have taken care of this because we have apologized, and for us, that's the end of the case. And he seems to...
Essentially, it means that whatever the error was, it was corrected in a subsequent issue of the paper.
Yes, and that's the media. We are not unlike the other professions like your own or the doctors. When a doctor had a mistake in the operation and the person dies, he will not come and tell people, oh, it's my mistake, I did that and that. But for us, we publish our mistakes in the front page of the newspapers.
Typically, it is accusation, first page, apology, last page.
No.
But in this case, was Mr. Sambaba satisfied with the correction and the apology?
He was, because after that story was published, even the fact that we assigned somebody to him, he explained everything, he walked out of the office happy. And the story was out, he had never confronted us again. But I know the government didn't leave it that way. I'm sure because later on we had a case on that until they have to sentence our colleague, and the GPU have to pay a fine of 50,000. That's about the same Sambaba story. So Sambaba, I believe, was later screwed, and then he took the matter to court. But that was the proper way to do, rather than arresting and harassing and closing the newspaper for that. Sambaba is a civil, is a Gambian citizen. If we wrong him, he has all rights to go to the courts.
So having shown proof to Mr. Keita that this matter was dealt with, done and dusted, apology made and accepted, what happened next?
He said, as far as he's concerned, he's happy with the story. He said, you can go. Little did we know that we are not really going home. So we walked out of his office very happy, thinking that we are going home, because we thought he's the last person, because he was the man that we went to for investigation. So as we went to the police to pick our belongings and to go home, the NIAs were around with their Benz again. They're not using any other vehicle. They're using a Benz for private. I think that's a private number plate Benz. And as we walked out, we were gripped. At this point, we were later made to understand that some of our staff knew that we were at the police station, so they were standing outside. I can see, I think one or two, I can remember one or two of them, and then we were just driven away. The vehicle that we were put in never went straight to the NIAs. They drove us around Banjul. I guess they just want to make sure that whoever is following us would not know where we are taken to. And finally, we went back to NIA offices again. This time, we were put in cell, both of us in the same cell. No. We were put in separate cells. We can be talking, but we can't see. And we've been in that situation for...
In which part of the NIA?
If you go into the main entrance, you will turn on your right. That's where you have the administrative, some of the administrative offices. And there are cells there.
Would it be the old investigations building?
It may be, but I'm not familiar with the offices of NIA. That was my...
But it's not the notorious Bambadinka?
No, this is an ordinary cell, though very small and tight. Because Bambadinka, I would have thought it's a hole by the name. I don't know. This is a cell. I don't know, but this is not Bambadinka, I think. But it's a horrible cell, because it's a very small cell, and you can't even stretch properly. If you are to lie down, you must coiled, otherwise you cannot. Or you lean on the wall and then sleep. And
Were you alone in that cell?
yes, for the first, I think 4 or 5 days, we were alone. I was in separate, we were in separate cells. And then, I think the 5th day, they brought in another prisoner. This is a Senegalese who later we became very good friends. It's called Naper. We had, before we left the NIA, we have this nickname. We call one another Manger Couché. Because I can't speak French very well, but he said, my boy, Manger Couché, you sleep, you eat and sleep. So
Manger Couché.
Yeah, sleep, eat and sleep, something like that. And he's called Naper. Naper is a police officer in the Senegalese army. So he was going to his native home in Casamas. And at the airport, he had to stop to go to the airport and pick a colleague. So whilst at the airport, according to him, and he was there, he was suspected of having relations with the Casamas rebel leader. Cannot remember the name of the person. And then they were going to arrest him, and it was tough. They had a good fight, and eventually they were able to overcome him. When they brought him at the NIAs, then that was the time they moved me from my cell to Musa's cell. So we started sharing cells, and they put Naper in my cell.
So this would have been after 4 or 5 days?
Yes.
Okay, meaning it's about 10 days in detention?
Yes, at that point.
So this 4 to 5 days at the NIA, I know you were eating because manger, you were sleeping, but let's talk about the feeding. You were not receiving food from home?
No.
Where were you getting food from?
When we were taken there, I had some money on me, so when I was put in the cells, I had to empty my pockets, and then they took note of the money I have and things like that. So I would ask the guards at the entrance to buy bread for me from that, and we also buy mosquito coils from there, and stuff like that. So I was eating from my...
In government custody?
Yeah.
You were using your own money for your
feed
survival?
myself, yes. And I use my own money also to buy mosquito coils, because it's highly infested with mosquitoes. Thank God I didn't catch any malaria during my stay.
And during the first 5 days in detention at NIA headquarters, did anything untoward happen to you the first 5 days?
The first 5 days, no, but then we were always disturbed in the night. We used to hear a lot of cries, loud cries, and we used to hear names like Musa Jame, and things like that. So, but we really don't know what was happening. But actually, we later knew what was happening.
How did you know what was happening?
Because we were also subjected to the same tortures.
Tell us about it.
We, on 2 occasions, the Musa Jame and Tumbul Tamba.
Let's take it one by one. First occasion.
Here, I may not be able to tell you the dates. I can only tell you it happened
twice. That is understandable. Tell us the first instance.
First incident.
What time of the day? What happened? Who was involved?
This is it always happens between 3 and 4 a.m. in the morning. And Musa and Tumbul will come with...
Musa who?
Musa Jame and Tumbul Tama. These are people who work in the army. But when they come to the NIS during that time, they are not in uniform. But they come with people who are in uniform.
What kind of uniforms?
Gambia National Army uniform. So I believe...
How many would they normally come with?
Should be between 6, 7, maximum 8. It's the early morning, so it's not very bright. Can figure out 6, 7, not more than 8. But I cannot tell who they are. But Musa and Tumbul Tamba, I can, because they are the ones who give instructions, so the soldiers will always be calling their names, and they will always give instructions. And interestingly, in the morning, Tumbul will not come to the NIA, but Musa will always come in the NIA in the broad daylight, and he will come bluffing and then tell us, you stupid journalists, before you leave here, we'll teach you a lesson. So I really know Musa. I can, even now it's like he's standing in front of me, but he's late now. Both him and Tumbul all died.
Did you hear about how they died?
I don't. When Musa died, I was in Russia attending the IFJ conference where I was elected to represent Africa. So I don't know how he died. But then later I was told they died of natural sickness and they were admitted, and some of them were speaking things that they were doing. I'm not privileged to those incidents, but I was told.
So while there, did Musa carry out the threats he was making while taunting you?
Yes, because the first incident, we were taken out early in the morning, but prior to the tortures, they have changed our cells conditions from what they call hard detention to light detention. So this time around, when the tortures were taking place, we were not in the cells. They had moved us to the reception, which is broad, which is bigger mattresses, and then you spend the night there.
At that reception, did you find other people there?
Yes, we joined with other people.
Like who?
I remember there is a lady from the then Minister of Information. I can't really recall the name very well, and yeah, and this my Senegalese friend Napier also was there. And that's it. That's all I can remember. Lots of people come and go. Some stay there for a while, and in the mornings we'll vacate the reception and sit somewhere inside under a mango tree until late evening when everybody closed. Then we'll move over to the reception. They call that light detention. So it was during the period of that light detention that the tortures took place. The first incident, like I said, Musa came with his men, call our names.
Musa who?
Musa Jammeh and Tumbul Tamba, both are soldiers with the Gambia National Army. They will come with soldiers, like I said, maximum 7, 8, something like that, and we were called out. So as we walked out of the reception, then they started kicking and slapping us. So we knew actually we should psychologically be ready for a torture. Personally, I quickly was prepared for a torture. So I wasn't surprised that I was going to be tortured. So I wouldn't have any shock to that extent. So we've been slapped, kicked, and then taken behind. If you enter the NIAs, there's a building, story building. Between that building and another building, there is a space dumped with sand and all sort of things. So these 7, 6, 8 soldiers will follow us, and then they will push onto those on the ground, and then they'll start beating. And these beatings will continue until Musa or Tumbul ask them to stop.
What would you be beaten with?
They use sticks, cables, electric cables. They use belts, they kick, and they beat anyhow they want. So you are only at their mercy. They will beat you anyhow. Before my experience, when people tell me that they kill, I really doubt it. But then anybody can die from that beating. Because these are people who are really, I don't think they are themselves. I don't have any proof, but I don't think anybody with your normal senses can beat your fellow human being like that for doing nothing. So whether they are under the influence of alcohol or whatever, I don't think they are really themselves. So they beat, like I said, with cables, with sticks, boots, their belts, and they beat anyhow.
Mr. Cisse, it's time for our first break. So With your indulgence, Mr. Chair, we leave it at that until we resume after the break.
Thank you, Council, and thank you, Mr. Cisse. We will take a 30-minute break and come back at 12 noon. Meeting is adjourned.
Bonjour les gars, comment allez-vous? Où avez-vous obtenu bon bélier? On dirait que vous le savez, là où je penche.
Mon ami, pensez-vous que vous êtes le seul à connaître toutes les bonnes nouvelles? Mon fils a acheté ce bélier, lui il est à l'étranger, avec Balouo.
Ah oui, en effet, ça doit être Balouo. Moi aussi, ma fille vient d'en acheter un de Balouo. C'est Tobaski. Vous pouvez acheter du bélier pour votre famille en utilisant le Balouo de confiance. Connectez-vous simplement sur le site balouo.com ou téléchargez l'application sur votre téléphone portable. Achetez ce bazar de bélier et d'autres produits alimentaires tels que le riz, l'huile de cuisson, du sucre et bien d'autres choses encore pour votre famille. Balouo, mieux que d'envoyer de l'argent.
Bonjour les gars, comment allez-vous? Où avez-vous